In a small town on Halloween night, a teenager named Jake was out trick-or-treating with his friends when he realized he'd forgotten his phone at home. Promising his friends he'd catch up, he turned back and decided to take a shortcut through the old, tangled woods. Notorious for their eerie legends, the moon barely peeked through the trees, casting strange shadows that danced along the narrow path. As he walked deeper into the woods, Jake heard faint, crackling sounds, the crunch of dry leaves. Only a few steps behind him, he stopped, glancing over his shoulder, his breath misting in the cool air. Nothing. Convinced he was alone, he continued on, quickening his pace, but soon, the footsteps returned, louder this time, matching his stride with an unsettling precision. A chill ran down his spine, and Jake broke into a run. The footsteps quickened, now pounding in unison with his own heartbeat, growing closer and closer. His lungs burned as he stumbled out of the forest. Finally reaching his street, he turned, breathless, expecting to see his pursuer. Instead, standing at the edge of the woods was a figure, dressed in an old-fashioned, ragged Halloween costume, with a mask that looked as if it had been buried for decades. Finally, he made it home, feeling shaken but relieved. His mother noticed his pale face and asked if he was okay, but then her gaze shifted, and her face went white. "Where did you get that mask, Jake?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Jake looked down, horrified. In his hand was a cracked, porcelain mask with hollow, soulless eyes. A mask he'd never seen before, no matter how hard he tried. Jake couldn't remember picking it up, and yet, he swore he felt something watching him from behind the empty eyes. On Halloween night, college student Ben received a mysterious invitation to a costume party in an old, unfamiliar mansion on the outskirts of town. The invitation was handwritten in elaborate script. You were cordially invited to a night of masquerade. Midnight arrival required. Don't be late. Intrigued, Ben put on his costume and headed out, following directions down winding roads until he reached the mansion. The mansion was grand, yet haunting, with flickering candlelight illuminating the windows and shadows that seemed to shift as he approached. Inside, the party was surreal. Guests in intricate costumes danced in slow circles to strange, haunting music. Ben couldn't shake the feeling that the guests' movements were mechanical, their smiles too wide and unnatural. As the night went on, Ben realized he hadn't recognized a single face. Every guest was concealed behind elaborate masks that never shifted, their expressions frozen in eerie smiles. He tried making small talk, but every attempt was met with silence or a cold, knowing stare. Around 3 a.m., the music abruptly stopped. The room fell silent as every masked guest turned toward him, their eyes glinting from behind their disguises. Nervously, Ben took a step back, but the guests closed in, whispering in unison, "You shouldn't have come. The ritual is about to begin." Panic seized him as the candles flickered out, plunging the room into darkness. Cold, bony hands grabbed him, pulling him deeper into the crowd. His mind spun, and he struggled, shouting for help, but his cries were swallowed by the chilling, rhythmic chant of the crowd. "One of us, one of us." With a final, desperate shove, Ben broke free and stumbled outside. He turned. The abandoned house at the edge of town had a dark reputation. Decades ago, the family living there vanished overnight, leaving behind only whispers of strange rituals and eerie occurrences. On Halloween, a local teen named Sarah accepted a dare to spend the night in the house. Determined to prove she wasn't afraid, she entered just as the clock struck midnight. Inside, a heavy silence settled around her, almost as if the house was holding its breath. Shadows seemed to creep along the walls, growing darker with each step she took. She moved from room to room, the boards groaning under her weight, and found herself surrounded by forgotten relics. old photos with blurred faces, torn clothes scattered on the floor, and a large mirror hanging in the hallway. As she stood before the mirror, she caught a glimpse of something unusual. In its foggy reflection, there was a faint outline of people standing behind her, shapes that grew clearer with each second. She spun around, heart pounding, but the room was empty. Yet in the mirror, their hollow-eyed faces stared back, their mouths open as if in a silent scream. Suddenly, she heard footsteps overhead, slow and deliberate. The sound grew louder, echoing through the empty house, until it reached the top of the staircase. Sarah froze as she watched a dark figure descend, moving closer with each step. Her instincts screamed at her to leave, and she bolted, racing down the hall. Just as she reached the door, a voice whispered from the darkness, chilling her to the bone, "Stay with us. Forever." On the outskirts of a small town lay an abandoned pumpkin patch. Local legend claimed it was cursed after a farmer mysteriously vanished there many years ago. Since then, no one had dared visit, except on Halloween night, when a few thrill-seekers would brave the fog-covered field. This Halloween, a group of teenagers decided to test the legend, sneaking into the pumpkin patch at midnight. As they walked through the field, a thick mist rolled in, muffling their laughter and making it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. The pumpkins were all withered and rotting, with strange, twisted faces carved into some of them, as if mocking the teens. They laughed it off, but soon felt the oppressive silence settling around them, making every sound seem amplified. One of the teens, Mia, tripped over a thick vine and fell, her hands sinking into the soft, cold earth. She quickly scrambled to her feet, but froze when she saw something glinting in the dirt, a rusted locket. Inside was an old, faded picture of the missing farmer, but the face next to him was blank, as if erased. She felt a chill creep over her as she realized the woman in the picture wore a necklace identical to hers. Suddenly, they heard soft whispers echoing through the field, voices chanting in a language none of them recognized. The pumpkins seemed to turn, their hollow eyes glaring, as one by one the teens realized they couldn't find the exit. Mia felt the ground shake beneath her, and then she saw them, bony hands clawing out of the dirt, their skeletal fingers reaching, dragging her friends into the soil. Mia ran, her heart pounding, but the whispers followed her, louder and closer. She finally broke free of the pumpkin patch and looked back, but the fog had closed in, obscuring everything. All she could see were hundreds of flickering jack-o'-lanterns, grinning through the mist, their eyes full of hunger. The next morning, the townsfolk found only Mia's necklace at the edge of the field, and the pumpkins in the patch looked fresher than ever.